Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wowhead Weekly 206. These numbers just keep growing and growing. We are live on a Sunday, which is very unusual, but we thought it would be very fitting since WoW Classic is coming out tomorrow. Tomorrow night for us in EU, tomorrow afternoon for you guys in NA. I was just about to introduce my co-host, but I realized I should first introduce myself. So I'm Annie Fuchsia, also known as Annie, and my lovely co-host is, as usual, Perculia.
Hey everyone, I'm Perk. I run Wowhead and I oversee all the guides and news and features, and we've been super busy prepping for Classic WoW. And I also have a cat that likes to join the show now and then, who was just eating the microphone a minute ago. We're doing a special
Yay!
show because we missed a few with Gamescom and other things, and we wanted to really, just do one because Classic was coming. And I'm really excited to announce that we have a guest this week. You may have read a lot of her work on Wowhead, a lot of our profession and other guides. I'm really happy to introduce Quissy TV.
Yay!
Yay!
Hey,
Welcome, Quissy.
how
Oh,
are you?
Luna
Thank
didn't
you.
like that clapping. She
Oh
just jumped
no.
off. Yeah,
Very
so
happy to
hello,
be here.
Quissy.
Hey.
Feel free to introduce yourself.
Oh, hey everybody. My name's Quissy. Yeah, like Perk said, I've been writing guides on Wowhead for probably at least the last half year or so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, ranging. They're all classic focused, ranging from dungeon guides to professions to a couple of gold making. I think we threw in there.
Yeah, we
Mm-hmm.
got
Uh,
Scarlet Monastery in there, I think. Yeah, we got a
yep,
few.
Ngoro
Goro,
Crater
yeah.
too. I
So,
also, whoops, I also make YouTube videos. Some of them are videos related to the Wowhead guides.
Mm-hmm.
Others are just general classic videos, and I also stream on Twitch too. So really happy to be
Awesome.
here.
Awesome. Quissy's socials are written just below her camera. Okay, now that I'm mirrored, I'm like confused. I'm pointing the wrong direction. But yeah, so down there you can see her socials as well if you want to check her out. And also, I noticed that you have someone in the chat using your emotes. Hell yeah.
Oh, hey everybody, what's up?
nice.
A couple people, even, not just one person.
Yeah,
Yeah, they are
good to
hyped for
see you
this.
guys.
Yes, awesome having you here as well, Quissy. It is perfect timing with Classic. Classic is coming out tomorrow, as mentioned, and that means today's show is mostly going to be surprise talking about Classic. There's not so many news. There's not no updates on PTR, no real updates on retail either. So the entire show is basically going to be talking Classic.
Yeah, which we are
Awesome.
perfectly fine with.
Yes.
And yeah, so as you've noticed, we've been pushing out a lot of like guide updates, and we're not going to go into every single update on Wowhead's news on the show, but we wanted to highlight the important things like what's the situation with realms, like what do we learn from that AMA, what are things you should uh do the first day of Classic, what are some big changes that you might be shocked by if you want to play Classic but didn't play vanilla. So we'll just run through some discussion things, and we'll answer any questions you have about like finding Wowhead guides, or if we have a certain topic at the end of the show.
Yep.
So I think we should first discuss realm updates. I've
Oh.
been doing updates
Mm-hmm.
every day, and the update I made today, we have several more realms that are full. So where we are now is that Firemaw and Flamegore moved from high to full today on EU, and Misriel from high to full on NA, and a lot of the medium realms are moving to high as well.
Hmm.
So that's where we are now, and then we're getting 9 more realms, 5 EU and 4 NA, on the morning of the 26th.
Yep.
So
Right.
do you know anyone that is like thinking about moving to one of the new realms, or are people less like, no, we're going to go with full? Who cares about the queue times?
Do you want to answer that, Quissy?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, just based on what I've asked, people around the community or in my
Mm-hmm.
chat, it's kind of split. Most people are kind of set, like now that they've reserved their names and their character, they're kind of
Mm-hmm.
hesitant to switch servers because maybe they're afraid that they're not going to get their name, or they're maybe they're also concerned about the population. So if they moved from a full server to a new server, there's a concern that the new server might have a dead population or maybe just die off after a few weeks. So I do think people are a little bit more hesitant to transfer if they're already settled.
Yeah.
Do you think that the populations are going to keep up? I mean, it looks so good for hype to see that so many things are full, but like I know Blizzard doesn't want to release so many realms and then have them be ghost towns in a few weeks. So do you think that the amount of realms they have is good, or do you think we're going to start seeing like realms being consolidated in, phase 2 or 3?
That's it's tough to say. It really is. I was kind of thinking about that the other day. Like, I think a lot of people expect the servers to the population to decline slowly over time, but you never know. Like, if you think about launch of vanilla, the population just kept growing from release date. So it could go one or two ways, right?
Right.
I think it is
really
a real
know.
I think it is a real concern for a lot of people. That's why having so many servers released the last day is actually very scary, because you get concerned that you're choosing a new server, which might be easy to get into, log into, and play on, but then that server may be dead in a month or two, or maybe even a few weeks. So I've experienced similar things to what Quissy has been experiencing, with people talking about how it feels safer to go for one of the main servers on EU. They are Shazra, Golmag, Firemaw. At some point, Firemaw was kind of new, but it's picked up a lot, and even like you said, it's considered full now. Same with Gehenna's as well. So those 4 servers seem like a safe bet, and the new 4 servers are a bit of a question mark. But it's still nice for Blizzard to have those servers come up, because there might be some people who just want to log in and play immediately, and those servers might be the highest chance for people to be able to get in. But yes, then there is a question of the longevity of those servers. Will they still last in a month or two? If someone is serious about playing in the long term, should they pick those servers? It's hard to tell.
Yeah, also keep in mind there aren't really character services in Classic WoW.
Yes.
Right.
They did say they will introduce that at some point, but we don't know when that point is. Is that in 6 months? Is that in 2 months? I'm sure if one of those new servers, maybe that's why they did it like this, so that most people choose those main servers, and then they have these 4 extra servers that they're hoping people who care less about community and people who may fall off later on, they log into those servers, they play a bit, and then in a month or two, maybe those servers end up being dead, and then they allow people to server change, so that people who did level there didn't waste their time. But then again, that's money as well. Then you have to spend money on changing servers, so it's a tough choice for people. Because I think I'm choosing. I have chosen Shazra EU for myself and my community, and I've been talking about it for a while now, but there is a high chance I won't even get in the first night, and if that happens I will log into whichever server I can and just level something, at least for a temporary time.
Like during the AMA, they said on the most popular servers such as Herod and Shazra, we are currently estimating lengthy queue times up to several hours or more in certain instances.
Yes.
So that is why we strongly encourage players to use the name reservation period to transfer their characters and guilds to lower pop realms.
Yes. Indeed.
So there you have it. Blizzard did also say that they didn't want to take the realms down right before Classic, so the idea is you could just wait on the character selection screen and then hit Enter World instantly. But I don't know. I wonder how the launch is going to go. I mean, Blizzard keeps warning people about the long times, but I think people are used to the modern conveniences of games just running smoothly in general. So I don't know what people will do when they suddenly have a long queue time for several hours. Maybe they'll just, like you said, go to flood the new servers and try to play on them instead, just to do something in the meantime.
Yeah, especially as streamers, I think I don't want to just sit there in a queue. Like queue place 10,000. So I have multiple WoW subscriptions. So what I'm gonna do is log into, or try to log into multiple, and then whichever I get into first, I'll just play that and keep my Shazra queue still active in case I get into it. So that's the way I'm planning to do it. Have my main server trying to get into my main server, but if I can't get into that, it's okay because I have multiple subscriptions, so I'll be playing on whatever server I can to start with, so that at least I can do something for the stream and everyone.
Can we also
That's a
talk
good
about the
plan.
names of the servers? Because I know some EU
Bigglesworth.
people. Yeah, there's a cat server, and then there's the horse server, Old Blanchy.
Uh-huh.
So I also know that people were like, oh, like NA gets all the really like cool one word servers, and EU has the ones that are a mouthful like Pyrewood Village, but
It's true.
I feel like EU got a few more ones like Gambling and Razor War that are like cooler now
Yeah.
with the new servers coming out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Bigglesworth is the best.
Yeah, it is. And it's a PvP server too.
Yeah,
So maybe I would
which
have
makes
gone there.
sense.
Gotta
'cause,
be.
Yeah, scratchy cats. Cats are always getting into trouble.
Have you talked to Brightpaw? Do you know if that's where he's gonna play?
Yes, Brightpaw is going to be a feral druid on Bigglesworth.
Nice.
And will be PvPing
Oh,
with the Tauren plushies.
very nice. Very nice. Is he gonna be streaming by any chance? Maybe we can catch him playing.
Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, he does. He turned. I was in the other room, like yesterday, and I heard my desktop announce that accessibility mode was turned on, where you can give voice commands. And I'm like,
Oh wow.
and I go in, and he's just sitting with his paw, and I don't know, he enabled accessibility mode.
Aww.
So I guess he was gonna start meowing commands at the computer.
Oh
So I don't
gosh.
know. Maybe he could play WoW.
I think he'd be very good at it.
Yes,
A
he's
natural
very good
feral.
at face rolling things.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so speaking of what's also coming with Realms the morning of the 26th, at 10 a.m. Pacific, that's when you can also make 10 characters per realm instead of the 3 total on your account that you are limited to now.
Yeah.
So it's basically like, you can make your bank alt's name, you can, try to reserve your character's name on every server now. You can, you can just have more flexibility, and then you can fill it up to those 50 character slots on your account.
Mm-hmm.
And that is before the servers go active at 3 p.m. Pacific, but at 10 a.m. is when you have extra realms and more character creation opportunities. So,
Wait, 3 p.m. is the launch time, you mean?
yeah, Pacific.
Because that makes midnight for us. Yeah, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, 5 hours.
But you have the 10
earlier, I think
characters before that.
Yeah. So I know I'm gonna be doing stuff like adding my bank alts, or maybe I have my characters on one account, and maybe I'll like see if they're all free on Bigglesworth or more of the low population ones, and just make a bunch that way, and try to get all my alts reserved, not just the top ones.
Yeah.
So
Good idea.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That is a good idea indeed.
Yeah, bank
but
alt.
yeah.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
That's something that I'll be doing tomorrow morning. Good tip.
Yeah.
Indeed. I didn't save a bank alt either.
It's interesting. I was thinking of what are guides we still need to do on Wowhead, and like what are things you should remember to do. And I'm like, oh, I should write about bank alts, and I should also explain, that you can make a guild at level 10, and these are things that I don't think people realize.
Oh, that's good to know.
Is
it level 10 you need?
Yeah.
Okay.
And people don't realize that, banks work differently, and guilds don't have banks, that you needed this is the character that is the bank alt. So those are things to keep in mind that I should probably highlight at some point.
Yeah, another tip with the bank alt is if you're running out of bag space and you want to mail stuff to your bank alt, you don't even have to log into that character for the first time. You could just create it and leave it in the character selection screen and just start mailing stuff to it.
Good to know.
So heads up, if you're running out of space, just start mailing stuff to your alt.
What about if you play Alliance? What race would you recommend in terms of finding the nearest mailbox? Because mailboxes weren't just there in front of you back then, right? Like nowadays we have the mailbox right there in Northshire, but I don't think you used to have that, right?
Yeah, as far as I know, in the human starting zone, the first one you find is in Goldshire. So
Okay.
you're probably at least at level 5 by that point.
Yeah, I feel like the human zone is the human alt, I think, is the easiest. Plus, it's an easy run to Stormwind for the auction house.
True.
So
True.
Yeah,
as
true.
opposed to
So
like
a bank alt
Calderso, where
should
it's like
probably be
twisty
human.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, good to
Yeah,
know.
good point.
Because if I send my stuff to my alt and then I log in to my alt and then I realize I can't mail anything back because I can't find a mailbox, that's good to know. What about for people on the Horde side? Is it best to be an orc then?
Ooh.
I feel like Undercity's super confusing. Just like going up and down
Yeah.
all the elevators. Yeah.
Are people
Yeah,
saying
I would
Tauren
say
in the chat?
I would probably
Yeah.
say Orc, because Tauren, you
Lights.
have the elevators as well.
Mm.
And Orgrimmar is like really central to everything, similar to Stormwind.
And there's no auction house in Thunderbluff, right? Or is there?
Oh gosh, I don't even know. I know there's one in the Undercity and Orgrimmar. I haven't played Horde.
Oh, people are saying
the
there
beta.
is. Okay.
Oh, there is in Thunderbluff. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, there it is.
Well, there you go. In that case, either an orc or a Tauren would then be recommended as a bank alt if you play Horde.
Yeah. Also, if anyone has easy access to a neutral Steam Weedle city, because auction houses, you could only auction house with your faction at the capital city.
Yeah.
But you could go cross faction at the neutral auction houses.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, the neutral auction
so
houses. We haven't seen those in a while.
Right.
Nope.
Yeah. That's in Ratchet, Booty Bay, and Gadget Zan.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I think those three.
like if there was an orc or a Tauren, you could get to Ratchet pretty easily, and do more trading there.
Mm-hmm. Well, some tips and tricks for everyone.
Do we have any more thoughts on realms, or do we want to discuss the recent news we learned at the AMA?
I think that's it about the realms. More realms incoming. Cool. You can have more names reserved. And I think that pretty much sums it up. We got it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Got it covered.
I am just finding the AMA post. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
So earlier this week, we had a special AMA with the Classic WoW dev team on the Classic WoW subreddit. And they answered a lot of questions. Some things were clarified, except for the loot, which I thought got less clarified. But yeah, so I have some things I thought were interesting that I learned. So we could talk about those, and if you guys found anything interesting as well. The first thing I wanted to discuss was the phase loot, because to me, they were very vague on how phase loot worked, and we learned a few more things, but there are still lots of questions, and it doesn't exactly work like Ian's tweet that he made a few months ago. So what I thought phase loot was, I thought anything in like 1.1 or 1.2 was phase 1, 1.3 and 4 was phase 2, 5 and 6 was phase 3, and so on, because that's what Ian made it seem like. But now they're saying that stuff is being organized based on like when it makes sense to come out. So all Molten Core loot is in phase 1, even though some items weren't introduced until like 1.5. And then there were hinterland hubs that had really good trinkets, like this Rune of the Guard Captain that gave you 1% hit, and they came in mid-classic, but it makes sense to have all the classic hubs available at the same time while questing, so that got moved to phase 1. And there's lots of little things like that, like there was some Uru loot from Encourage that actually was added with Nax, but with this logical mindset, that loot is then at the start of AQ. So there's a lot of confusion now where people are like, oh yeah, then apparently the Thunder Fury bindings, they specifically said will be available in phase 1, but you can't craft it until phase 3 because you need the Elementium from Blackwing Lair. So you could now be farming Thunder Fury bindings at the very start of Classic, as opposed to having it be a surprise like midway through Vanilla. So there's all these things were shifting around, which caused a ton of confusion. And they clarified some things, but they seem to really want some things to be up in the air. And I'm not sure why, because so many details of Classic WoW have been documented, and there are so many more resources, so it can't have the same mystique as Vanilla. Like for example, we know that the UBRS like ketchup loot in phase 5 is coming in phase 5, like the Spellweaver's Turban. But Other people are like, well, when's Cenarian Circle loot coming? Is that phase 4 because in vanilla that came with green dragons, or is that phase 5 because you said it makes sense to be with the Encourage stuff? So there's still a lot of people want to know where everything is from, and there's a lot of confusion surrounding it. So are you guys cool like not knowing where everything is dropping, or would you like more clarity on this?
You want me to go ahead?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
uh, I feel like if this was how it was back in 2004, 2005, 2006, whatever, it would be a lot more confusing. But
Yeah.
not to plug Wowhead, but I'm plugging Wowhead. But like with great resources like Wowhead and YouTube and Twitch, like the information's going to be out there, so I think it's going to be a lot less confusing. And it'll be a lot easier to kind of clarify like when certain loot will become available and what specific phase.
Yeah.
So I think it has to do with the kind of like the day and age that we're in,
Mm-hmm.
where it's I don't think it's going to be a big deal, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. I think we're used to having information. We're used to everything being clear before we jump into it. Personally, I don't mind finding out things as we kind of go. I never really played Classic back in the day, so regardless of what happens, it'll feel, relatively fresh for me. But I do understand that people are used to having information, used to knowing how things work beforehand so that they can be as, optimal and efficient with their time as possible. And they want to know what they should focus on as early as possible, to know that when they're spending their time that they're doing it efficiently. So I can understand that. And this can prove to be quite confusing, not knowing what loot will be
Yeah.
available when.
It's an interesting like information clash because in the spirit of vanilla, we wouldn't know when any
Yeah.
items were added. Like we wouldn't know any drop tables, and I feel like Blizzard's trying to preserve some of that mystery. But
Mm.
because of like Twitch and YouTube and everyone having completed the content and knowing where things drop, we already know all the loot tables for everything. So
Yeah.
we can't totally be in the dark because we already know all the possible items, and people are just trying to theory craft and figure out what goes where. So I
Mm-hmm.
see what Blizzard's trying to do, and I think what they're doing is in the spirit of vanilla. But on the other hand, it's like difficult to put the cat back in the bag when we
Yeah.
have the loot tables that we didn't like the patch notes didn't come with loot tables. There was no dungeon journal in vanilla. But we have all this extra information that is hard to
Mm-hmm.
uh you know
Yeah.
well, no one's ignoring it. Everyone really cares about
Yeah.
everyone is like really interested in this. So
And you can't force people
yeah.
to be freshly excited again if they've already gone through it before. So I think, yeah, for them to be transparent with the loot, I think is probably a good thing so that people can plan their time and everything.
I think it's interesting how it's led to a lot of different theory crafting because like what was a good thing for people to aim for in like patch 1.2 is not the same as is in classic. If someone is like, oh, like what's good loot to have at the start of molten core, is like, well, now there's all this extra loot at the start of molten core and 1.12 abilities. So it does keep the theory crafting a little fresh, I think, because it's like
Mm-hmm.
the variables are tweaked from vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
you
that's
might
cool.
actually find some surprises like, oh, when I was clearing molten core back in the day, I don't remember seeing this drop on the first kill, but hey,
Mm-hmm.
now this is actually good for my class. So there,
Yeah,
I don't know. I think it might keep people on their toes. I would personally like to know as an admin when things are
of
coming
course.
because people have been asking me so much for phase information, and when I
Mm-hmm.
tell them that I don't want to make filters because I don't want to put the wrong things, people are getting very
Impatient.
impatient and disappointed. So I tried to add basic filters in, and then it's like, well, I still don't know when everything is. But yeah, I think it's just like a mind shift. Like people just expect that we'll know when everything is coming in advance and every little aspect will be documented. And when I tell people, hey, I want to hold off, they're like, why? Like, just take a guess. Put you'll get most of it right. So I think that is sort of an information shift from 15 years ago, thinking that we just know when everything is coming through data mining
Mm-hmm.
or public betas or PTRs or press releases.
Mm-hmm.
That the idea that we don't want to show something or something's a mystery is like sort of foreign right now.
Mm-hmm. We are in the
Um,
information age. Everyone wants to
yep.
know all the information. Don't keep it
Yep.
secret. Bring it.
But yeah, so besides the phase loot, which everything is now fixed on Wowhead up until phase 4, because I still couldn't figure out Cenarian Circle loot.
Oh, yeah.
Another thing which I thought was interesting was how they also clarified player caps and the raid reset lockouts.
Okay.
And I feel a lot of people didn't know about this, especially if you weren't playing back in the day. So just to clarify, um, most raids are on a 7-day lockout, but Onyxia is 5 days, and ZG and AQ will be 3 days. So it's not like, oh, Tuesday gonna farm only for my mount and molten core for my bindings. Like they're all gonna be on different days.
Yeah.
Oh, you mentioning Tuesday made me realize. Do we know if NA and EU will have reset on the same day?
They will not.
No. Okay, but it's
I think
launching
that-
at the same time.
Yeah, it's gonna be like BFA, where like EU had like 1 day of
1 day
time
later.
to do stuff. Yeah, before the
No.
reset.
So we're gonna
No,
have
it
to
was the
wait an
same day.
extra day again for the new raids and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
But
Damn
EU
it.
wins the race anyway, so
True.
Yeah,
So it doesn't matter.
Best.
No, but that's just so annoying as a streamer, because then like you're streaming that day, but nobody wants to be there because everyone wants to watch the new content. So
yeah.
I might as well not stream that day. But yeah, okay, good to know. Good to know. Feels bad, man.
I mean, well,
Yeah.
at least the good thing about Classic is that there's so many different things to do. So like,
yeah, there's always going to be things to
Yeah.
do, but like you're robbed off that excitement of new content, you know? You have
Yeah.
it 24 hours later.
Mm. You said you have multiple WoW accounts. Do you have
you
an
can,
NA
yeah.
account?
I do have an NA account, but I'm not sure if I'm going to level it to 60 in
Like,
like a
it's
manageable
like
time.
commitment,
Like the week before the new raid, Annie is gonna like level into
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah, it's
multi-core
not like
next
BFA,
week.
right?
Yeah, let me
Yeah.
just quickly level to 60 on NA.
Yeah, 60 boost.
Yeah, 60 boost. But yeah, I do have an NA account, so we'll see. I mean, I do realize as a streamer, I do have a lot more time than the regular person who has a regular like 9 to 5 job outside of being on the computer. But yeah, if I could make it work, maybe I will level on NA as well to be able to do something that first day. We'll see.
Something extra to do.
Yep.
Another interesting thing was player caps. I feel like they're implementing the player caps for dungeons in patch 1.12, but a lot of people have, like, they remember things from earlier patches. So, for example, you could enter Blackrock Spire with 15 players prior to the AQ patch. So a lot of people have like really fond memories of that, or an early vanilla where you could do 40 people were in the instance. Blizzard's confirmed that they are going with a cap of 10 for most dungeons, except for a few max level ones like Scalaman, Stratholme, Blackrock Depths, and Dire Maul. So you can't do the dungeon quest when you're in a raid though. So you would make sure you're not in a raid if you are, doing that. So if you're raiding Dead Mines, you cannot do the Dead Mines quest.
Yeah.
Wait, so you can be up to 10 people in Dead Mines?
Yeah, and you could be up to 40 people in Dead Mines, like when Vanilla came out.
Oh. I didn't realize this.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
I love
Okay.
40 level 1s running in there.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, so those were the things that stood out to me when I was covering it. Were there any little tidbits that stood out to you? I think it was also funny how they said that hunters were like really difficult to replicate, and I think we saw like they had the most bug reports surrounding them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So did any replies seem interesting to you? I know there was that like monster layering reply as well.
Yeah,
Monster layering.
I like the leashing, the clarification on the leashing.
Yeah.
Lord Kazik does have a leash, but other bosses in the world do not. They didn't specify which, to kind of leave an air of mystery about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Of course.
I kind of like that. So now we'll definitely find bosses in major cities. It's only a matter of time. We just have to figure out which ones don't have hard leashes. So I thought that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas, or are people is it gonna just be like, oh, we're hit 60, let's test this and see, or do you guys have any like suspicions who you think could visit a city?
I mean, during the beta, I don't know if you were watching when Asmongold kited that dragon. I don't remember the name of what it was, but I think it was from
I think I saw
the
that. Was it to
Blasted
Stormwind?
Lands. I forget that. I forget which dragon it was.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
Maybe Burning Steps. I feel
maybe
like
Burning Steps. Yeah, but kited it all the way to Stormwind, and then they kited it all the way up to Thandal Span, which is north of the wetlands, and then we got intercepted by the Horde, and the dragon despawned. We don't know if that was a GM thing or if like that's where the extent of the leash was, but that was a really cool event. If anybody, I don't know if anybody in the chat has the name. Oh, Teramis. Yeah, there we go. Teramis, that's the dragon. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
that's the one.
I remember that from Vanilla. Yeah, he was wandering about.
So just fun things like that. I'm looking forward to.
Oh, another interesting was the skeletons. So someone asked if the skeletons that appear when someone dies be the same as it was originally. Right now they disappear after you die again. They used to stay longer than that. So basically, if there was a pile of skeletons somewhere, you'd be like, oh, this is obviously very dangerous. There are many dead bodies here.
Yeah.
But Blizzard said they didn't want to replicate that behavior because people were using them to spell out things like advertisements or hate speech or messages. But I feel like people can abuse the system different ways. Like I don't know. I feel like on live servers you see a bunch of like level 1s and they spell out a message in Orgrimmar, and they aren't dead. They're just there. So I mean, technically, they can do the same thing in Classic. I don't know. I sort of like the charm of the skeletons. It was like a nice reminder in the world that you were hitting a dangerous area.
I would have liked that too.
Yeah, I what was it? I think it was the last stress test. There's this death skip that you can do if you're coming out of Ironforge and you want to get to Manethil Harbor. You basically like head west and you go a little bit towards Nomergan and you climb over the mountains. But when we were practicing it during the stress test, just as we were about to jump down to plummet to our death, we saw like a pile of skeletons, which was a good indication that we were in the right area and that we were doing the right thing. So I appreciated like seeing the pile of skeletons there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like those messages in other games like Dark Souls, or I think even Mop had that toy that had the warning on it, the little warning signs, and I don't know, it's like I like little stuff like that that adds to the world.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. And with if people are starting to spell out hate speech and things like that, there should be a way that I don't know, maybe somebody could flag it right away. So maybe.
Yeah, I mean the modern reporting system is in game for Classic, right? So you could just report them, and yeah.
I just saw Kitsuki's message. I'm here because there's too much Alliance favoritism on this show today, and that's a good point. You've got the Alliance flags in the background. I approve. That's great.
Yeah, I hear this is Horde.
Oh, there we go. Got Horde representation.
Horde
Except it's a Moonkin.
Oh, that's true. She has the Horde one too.
Yeah. Yeah, very viable DPS.
Indeed.
We've got two Moonkins and a cat druid.
2 Moonkins and a cat druid. Yep, that's it.
Yep.
And the most important information from this AMA, obviously, is that character boosts are not going to be a thing in Classic. I know that's very shocking, but yeah, they're not. And that means if you want to get to level 60 fast, the best way to do it is level a DK, and then there's only 5 levels to go. No. There's been so many memes about that. Like, I'm going to play a DH, but I'm not sure how to go back in level. Yeah, I don't know either. That's a tough one.
A lot of panda jokes, too, I've seen.
Yeah. Was there anything else from the AMA that you wanted to talk about? I think that summed up most of it. We can also link this quickly in the chat in case you guys want to check it out. But there's a lot of different topics, and there's a table of contents, so you can click on whatever sounds interesting.
I thought this was interesting.
Yeah.
Going back to phases. So, in Vanilla, different patches introduced holidays, but I think they were like seasonal based. Like if a patch came out right before Halloween, that patch had Halloween. But if we applied that to phases, it would get sort of out of sync. So they said that um, holidays are just going to be live when that time of the year comes around. It's not going to be like, oh, it's October, but 1.10, we're still in phase one, so we're not going to put this basic holiday in
Oh
for the
yeah.
next year. So that's nice to know. I know some things had like interesting buffs or just fun to do for collectibles, so that's nice. It will be in there at start and making the world feel alive. So
Yeah.
I guess we're gonna have, yeah, Hollow's End is going to be the first holiday we're gonna encounter, and then Wintervale, so that'd be cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Holidays and classic. That's awesome.
It's very
Yeah.
cozy.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So yeah, I think we can
Yeah, we
take a quick
can.
break and just highlight our recent subs and our shop, and then we have a few more announcements,
Mm-hmm.
news as well.
I can see here that Swiggy Swoo resubbed with a 20-month streak. Thank you so much, Swiggy.
Thank you.
20 months is a long
Awesome.
time.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Creeping up to the 2 years. Thank you very much. And a quick talk about the system that we have here on Twitch with Nether Shards. As you're watching the stream, you gain a currency, and you can use this currency to redeem real things IRL sent to you, actual physical things, such as the Wowhead rocket plush and also pins, different Wowhead pins that you can order for Nether Shards. So that's good to know.
As a side note, we sold out of our classic Wowhead pins. Do I have them here?
Oh yeah, I think I saw tweets about that.
Yeah, we are 100%. Oh wait, no, I found it. So I found one of them.
Are you gonna bring more, or is that it?
I found them. No, that is actually it. We wanted to keep them limited. We're experimenting with different types of pins, but yeah. So
Oh.
there
Cool.
they are. And then we did a Thoughtbot one.
Uh-huh.
Oh, awesome.
Or Horde and Alliance.
Yeah. So
Red and
I
blue.
should actually put this on to have it match my outfit.
Mm-hmm.
If I can figure this out. So yeah, so thank you so much for your support with that. We're experimenting, with merch and what's popular and what's not, and these pins were super hyped. So we're gonna maybe look into doing different classic ones coming soon.
That's awesome.
Cool.
But yeah, so besides the AMA, we learned some more news. This was another topic that was interesting to me and other site developers. There's going to be no API at launch, and I know people have heard the term API thrown around with add-ons. That's still around, but what we were curious about were things like a character profiler, or the armory that shows your gear, or it's an API that would let us do things like seeing your flying progress in BFA, or how many quests you've completed. That type of API will not be present at launch.
Mm-hmm.
And while it's disappointing from a site perspective, because it would make automating things easier, those types of tools were not present in vanilla. And then I guess you could argue that, like, oh well, but every site is more advanced. Like, there's classic Warcraft logs, there's classic Wowhead guides. But the more interesting thing is that you couldn't really inspect people fully in game. So I think having the out of game profiles would erode that social experience.
Mm-hmm.
Although I do have to wonder if there's going to be something like classic Warcraft logs, where people can upload their logs and you can see everyone's talents and performance, if that would sort of be an out of game way of checking people's profiles. But there's still that extra step. But yeah, just to remind people, there is no option to inspect players at all for talents. So while in Classic, you can walk up to someone, inspect them, and see their gear to, yes, make sure that in fact they know what they're doing and have the right gear, and they're not, in greens trying to take something at max level.
Yeah.
You still can't see their talents.
That's interesting. So. And is that going to stay that way? Was it like that for the whole of Classic back in the day?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they said that the actual armory was not created until Burning Crusade.
Okay.
So, yeah. But I don't know. I feel like it could be something added later, especially if people are doing so many advanced things,
Mhm.
like you can upload your character profile to these sites I was talking about, or
Mhm.
with WoW's gear planner, people have saved like over 1,000 gear and talent setups already, and you can just reference that out of game.
Mhm.
But
Hmm.
I appreciate what they're trying to do. It makes sense why they don't have the armory. I just think that some people might be surprised, because if you didn't play in vanilla, you always sort of grew up
Yeah.
with the armory in all
Yeah.
its different forms.
You're used to checking your character out. Uh, what about add-ons? Are we likely going to find an add-on that on mouse over, for example, lets you know how good their gear is? Like, do you think it's possible to get something like gear score come back
Oh
because of
God, I
add-ons?
hope
Mm.
not.
Yeah,
I
but
hope not.
I'm wondering, like, is it possible? Because if it is, I'm sure people will do that.
It,
Yeah.
I think it's certainly possible that that could be created. Whether or not Blizzard allows it to exist is another question, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're going to touch on that in a little bit. But the recent
Yeah.
news, the add-on.
The interesting thing is that when Blizzard announced they were using the 1.12 version of the add-on API,
Mm-hmm.
that didn't mean a lot to people, but that
Hmm.
version of the API led to a lot of flexibility and creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have those add-ons back in the day because people, didn't have years of knowledge creating
Exactly.
and improving things with WoW. But
Mm-hmm.
with the modern day knowledge, you can do quite a lot with the 1.12 foundation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
people
definitely.
might be surprised with
Mm-hmm.
the types of features coming out.
And this kind
Um,
of brings us up to the next topic, the
Right.
classic LFG add-on. This
yep.
caused a lot of controversy, a lot of discussion, a lot of talk on Twitter and any other social media that you may be following. So the classic LFG add-on was one which was supposed to work like an LFG that we have in game today on retail, meant to help people on classic search for people to group up with to do content like dungeons. And the question was, should this add on be allowed? There were a lot of people who were saying no, because this would ruin the spirit of the whole social experience of Classic. While other people were saying, well, why does it matter? You can just not use it. Let other people play how they want to. And it seems like we got a word from Blizzard, correct, about this.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I clarified things, but it was still confusing because
Mm-hmm.
they said after careful examination, we believe the nature of classic LFG is incompatible with their social design for classics. That's like yes. And they
Mm-hmm.
say thus in an upcoming patch, we will be adding restrictions to the classic add-on API that will significantly limit this add-on and others like it.
Yeah.
Uh, so then it's like, okay, well, it will still exist. How will it significantly limit it?
Yeah.
Will it break other add-ons that uh, don't have that functionality, but maybe
Mm-hmm.
use some of the same components?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people are concerned that it could inadvertently break things that are totally unrelated to this type of add-on, and it might be like a cat and mouse game where there's no clear guideline on what crosses the line, and the people making add-ons are just doing this for free for fun. So what else could be considered crossing a line in the future? Are
Yeah.
Discord bots crossing a line, or asking people on Twitter or Twitch, or if someone made a gear score advanced add-on, or or is a thing like Warcraft logs having a breakdown showing which spec ranks the highest on a fight. Like there are all these things that are not present
Mm-hmm.
in classic WoW. Like I do think classic LFG crossed the line, but I think that now there will be this can of worms whenever something comes out that is different, where people will wonder if it will be allowed or not. And yeah, I also feel bad for the add-on developers who are now worried that their add-ons might just break in an upcoming patch as a
Yeah.
result of this.
Yeah.
Mm.
Add-ons that may not be an LFG add-on, right? They could
Right.
be doing
Yeah.
something else, but maybe they're using the same. I don't know exactly how add-on creating is, but some kind of component in the add-on itself that uses something similar to LFG but not for the same purpose may not work now because of this. Did they say when they were going to do this? Like when is this part going
No.
to break? Okay.
They didn't say that. They just said sometime after launch.
Okay.
There was also some discussion that there was an add-on in Classic called, I think, Call to Arms, where
Mm-hmm.
it was like a very basic version, and people didn't really use it, but you could look and search for groups. So maybe it's a cultural thing where that wasn't a big deal 15 years ago, but
Yes,
now with
I think that's
everything
it.
so like heavily socialized, people are like, oh, like this is now an issue.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it just goes back to people not realizing what is popular with add-ons with our advanced knowledge 15 years
Right.
later.
Yeah, I think those add-ons may have existed, but because people didn't use it, it didn't become a huge thing. People still felt like most people have to care about making friends, joining a guild, etc. And with the LFG add-on being basically a quite central part of current WoW, they feel like most people will go towards that, meaning maybe 80-90% of the people on your server actually don't care about guild formation and constantly just use this add-on instead. And I think that's why people who are not planning to use it still think that it would be bad for the health of the server itself.
Yeah, plus the name of it too, it's like classic LFG. Like
Yeah.
it's just like it just like triggers that like Battle for Azeroth
Yeah.
LFG vibe. So
It
if
couldn't,
you
yeah.
yeah, it's like
Uh-huh.
it definitely wants you to think. It's like it feels very tongue in cheek.
Yep.
They really should have chosen a different name.
Yeah, like I don't know, like friend finder or like
Yeah, looking
manual
for yeah.
finder. Yeah, I don't know. It just it definitely drove that parallel in people's minds.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
Definitely.
I think that they had like added functionality at one point, and they were trying to pull back. Like people were saying that you could like automatically invite people, and it was like spamming. I don't, it was like spamming trade chat, being like, check out this add-on. And I think they were saying that the devs wanted to tone the features down. But you know, these are things that streamers were showing that you could do with it, which seems very obnoxious.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah. Especially
and then
the automation portion of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry.
and then you have everyone confused. Like they're worried that they don't want their server to be a ghost town, and they're like, well, you know, I'm not a streamer. I can't, you know, I don't have as much time to play as I did 15 years ago. How am I going to find a group, you know, 6 months from now if my server is empty? And I can't just spend, you know, 2 hours, like, you know, sitting in a city forming a group like that. That's my playtime, 2 hours.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't think that this is the solution for it. And forming server communities, like I believe a lot of servers have a Discord now. I think that is a better. I think that's more in the spirit of Classic than.
Yeah,
know,
I agree.
LFG.
Because Discord still makes you, communicate with people and talk to each other, possibly voice with each other. Of course, you don't have to voice, but it leads to somewhat talking. Whereas LFG has this impression of joining a group, don't say a single word, finish the dungeon, bye. And I think that's what
Yeah.
people don't like.
Plus, the Discord
Right.
feels like an extension of the server community because, you know, if you are someone that's ninja looting or if you're annoying to run with,
Exactly.
like, if you ask around in your Discord who wants to run with me, people won't if you have a rep for being an annoying player. Or flip side, you know, people will actually want to run with you if you're really good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I do feel that there is going to be a movement now where people start realizing that there are aspects of Classic that are not the same as vanilla, or like more advanced things can be done that people didn't think of. Like this add-on didn't break any rules. It was done with the Classic framework. So
Yeah.
and like I said, you know, people are going to be like, hey, like Wowhead is a lot better than Thoughtbot, like, you know, or, you know, they have a class guide, not just a talent calculator, or our raid logging tool has breakdowns as to who's in the top percentile versus just, you know, who died at one point. Like people are going to start realizing that things are more advanced and social media is different, and even streaming is a, you know, big different factor.
Yeah.
So
Streaming didn't
I don't
even
know.
exist back then.
Yeah, so I just hope people realize that like Classic is in the spirit of vanilla, but it's not going to be 100% the same.
No.
And yeah, just to try to be calm and that we're all here because we like the game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's a good point to make. Like, Classic is not equal to vanilla. Classic is like a vanilla plus.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I know there's been all this discussion about what happens after Phase 6. And, you know, it's like, do we do Burning Crusade? I've heard rumors for like, oh, like they'll add new Classic content. I don't think they'll go that route because that's a lot of
A lot of work.
I mean, it would be cool to see the zones that weren't used just sort of put there in the games you could run around. But I don't know. I think that they're going to go with Burning Crusade, and it'll just be
I think
like
so
this.
too.
I think it all depends on how popular the game is as well.
Right.
Because maybe people simply love level 60 so much and they're not interested in TBC because TBC maybe brought some things to the game that people don't like. So they would
Plus, you
rather
could
see
be,
more
like-
content on Classic.
You could be fully geared out too and do things like, you know, speed runs or trying to solo all dungeons, you know, get your, you know, could almost be like the MDI where you start, you have all your gear and then the gear doesn't matter. So you just try to do things as fast as possible with skill or do things with, you know, weird compositions. Or, you know, crazy world PvP one-shotting people in your, you know, best in slot gear on your like meme specs that have crazy burst damage, stuff like that.
Like, I think TBC could be a possibility for sure. But I think if they would ever consider Wrath, I think that's a mistake. Because I think a lot of
Wrath
the things...
had LFG.
Yes, exactly.
That was, like, yeah.
Yeah, then it's not really a classic or old experience anymore. Like, Wrath is actually, to a large extent, very similar to a lot of the ideas that we have in BFA and everything. And I mean, it was still a very good expansion, of course. It brought a lot of cool things to the game. But a lot of these cool things is what ended up making people not like the game.
Yeah, like that's when they had the first store mount, they had the badge system, they had the LFG system, they had the many different difficulties. Although some of the earlier hard modes were cool, but yeah, they sort of introduced a lot of the framework for modern WoW in Wrath.
Or I guess it was kind of like a transition towards the end of Wrath. Like you mentioned, the difficulties that kind of happened towards the later tiers of the expansion. So I guess it's kind of like if the beginning of Wrath was okay for most players, it definitely started becoming not okay later on. And then especially with Cataclysm coming in, I think that changed WoW for a lot of people.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, yeah. That's when LFR came out.
Yeah. Speaking of changes, I've been cranking out this whole series on like biggest changes to professions or leveling or dungeons, because a lot of people don't realize there were changes. So I thought it might be good to just like hit up some key topics and see like what are things that chat doesn't know about, like, you know, or have you played in like did you not play in vanilla? Are there things you want to know about professions that are different, or dungeons or DPS, for example? Like looking at professions first, like one big change is like, hey, there's first aid is back. There's no reagent tab in the bank. You know, there was no inscription or jewel crafting. You can't automatically relearn recipes when you retrain a profession. So, you know, like what are some shocking things with professions that, Quissy, you've written all the profession guys. Like what are things you think that people that didn't play vanilla but want to play classic should know about professions? And maybe it's the same as mine.
Yeah, no, that was actually something big for me because I had been used to playing retail and then going back and playing the beta. It's like relearning all of these things over again. So most of them for me did have to do with professions. One big thing is that you can fail at gathering a profession. Like if you go to mine an ore, you could get a failed attempt, meaning you have to remine it. Also in BFA, when you collect something such as an herb, you collect all of them at once. Whereas in Classic, you get like a few different picks at it. Oh, well, herbalism, I forget if that's the case in herbalism, but I know with mining, for sure. That was the profession I had, where you have to hit the ore several times in order to collect everything. You could also... like in BFA, everybody has access to that node as well. Whereas in Classic, if you're on a PvP server, somebody might gank you if you're trying to steal their ore.
When did that change? The sharing of the same node. That was kind of late, right? Was it WOD or something?
Legion, maybe?
Legion,
Legion even? Yeah. Okay. Because I know that happened quite late.
Yeah,
I remember having to fight for it for a long time.
Yep. Especially
Another thing is,
oh yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, needing to have the actual tools in your bag, like the mining pick and the spinning knife.
Oh yeah.
Like, you know, and then you could increase your skill beyond the cap, and you needed to with these special knives in order to get the best things like the Zulian slicer. You couldn't skin like Magmador, for example, or get the pristine hide of the
Mm.
beast if you didn't have these special knives equipped to go beyond 300 skinning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Finkel's Skinner is the one from Upper Blackrock Spire, and
Yep.
you also need the skinning enchant in order to skin, yeah, like Onyxia and
Mm.
high end bosses.
Or even if you're max skilled.
Yep.
Yeah, if you're 300, you still can't skin Onyxia.
Oh,
So
okay.
you like Perk said, you need that
Uh-huh.
dagger, you need the enchant.
Good to know. I
Also,
thought that
there's
was.
no.
Mm-hmm.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead. I was gonna say with enchanting that you can only enchant gear in the trade window. You can't just put a vellum and stick it on the auction house.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
So
right,
that's a
yeah.
big one. You have to go find someone that has. You have to like get the materials or find someone with the materials, and you need to pay that person directly for the materials. But don't do that first. You need to have proof that they can actually craft the recipe, because you don't want to give them money and then they close the trade window. Then that person ran off with your money. So that is a big thing. So having a guild
Ah.
enchanter is good, because if you got a piece of gear during a raid, you could then like just run over to the enchanter that had the super rare recipe, and they could do it for you during the raid.
And
Gotcha.
that's another difference too. You actually have to have all of the materials present in your bags, whereas in current BFA, you can have trade materials in your bank and still be able to craft and something from your recipe book.
Mm-hmm.
But in Classic, you need to have the items present on
Yeah.
your person.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Time to spam trade chat. Selling enchants, 100 gold.
That's what people would do. Or it's like, oh, this rare enchant dropped in the raid is someone, really loyal to the guild that does all the enchants. Like, we should have that person get the enchant
Yeah.
to ensure that someone in the guild has always access, and someone doing it for free versus giving it to someone who could just, not be around as frequently.
Yep.
So,
For sure.
yeah,
The guild needs a main
absolutely.
enchanter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, what about leveling? Biggest changes to leveling between BFA and Classic. So,
Biggest changes. I mean,
no heirlooms or boosts.
Yeah, no heirlooms.
True.
I was
No
gonna say
boost.
Yeah.
No DK at 55.
How about training your skills every even
Oh,
Oh yeah.
yes.
every even level? Also
Mhm.
using your talent points after level 10. Every
Mhm.
time you level after level 10, you got to use your talent points.
Mhm.
What else? God, there's
It's
so much.
slow.
Weapon skills. Yes.
Yes. Weapon
Yep.
skills. That's true. Especially as a melee class, you may be very surprised that your attacks are missing. You'll notice it more than casters, I think. Or I guess you would notice when you're wanding, which is a bigger thing then than it is now. Actually, wanding is not even possible in today's game, is it?
Oh yeah,
You
they
can use-
removed wands, right?
Yeah, you can
Or-
use the wand, but I think it's like an either or. So you can have
Oh.
the ranged equip as well. So for example, like rogues can't have a bow and a main hand and offhand. Hunters can't have stat sticks in their bow. It's like
Mhm.
you can just have 2 slots filled.
Mhm.
Ah, okay.
And about learning the skills as well, buying the new ranks for your specs and being able to have different ranks of the same spell bound onto your action bar, which could be useful in different ways. For example, a faster cast or a lower mana cost. So skills that are good for utility. Maybe you have something that slows people that you attack, then you might want the lower one because you don't care that much about the damage. You just want it to be something fast and cheap to control the person in front of you. So that's something to keep in mind.
I also want to mention the dynamic scaling, how questing zones and dungeons scale to your level in BFA.
Oh yeah.
And especially in the 2 Azeroth zones, a lot of zones scale to from 10 through 60. But in Classic, they have a very distinct level range. You only have a few handful of zones that you can go-between.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go to a high-level zone, the mobs are red, and they will attack you even if you're on the path, because you'll have a big aggro radius.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to keep that in mind, which also makes it more difficult to quest if you're like, if you're 40 and your friend is 50. It would be like easier in BFA to quest together, but in Classic, the level just, you can't just be like, oh well, I'll just tag along with my friend who's, and you'll just be aggroing everything unless your friend is cool with that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, this was another, going back to add-ons. There's no quests and objectives displayed on the map, but of course, you know, like there are add-ons that are replicating that type of thing, but
Mm-hmm.
the spirit of Classic, that won't be there by default.
Yeah.
So
Right.
And talking about quests in general, I think a lot of the quests in the classic zones were streamlined in Cataclysm. So they are a lot less streamlined, meaning that you'll find a lot of different random quests cluttered everywhere rather than picking up one quest and then being sure to find a nice red thread through it all. So you may need to do some exploring to find all the quests that you may want to pick up.
yeah, and that's also important for dungeon quests. We'll talk about good. This is a good transition into dungeons, but uh, we're used to having the NPC outside the dungeon that just has a bunch of quests, and you pick them up. But in Classic, the dungeon quests are scattered around the world. They have really good rewards, so you definitely want to pick them up. And some of them are tied to longer chains, so you can't just pick it up. You have to do like a bunch of quests before that unlocks as well.
Mm-hmm. Like for Dead Mines, you need to do a quest line in Westfall, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or like with the Sunken Temple quest, it's like, oh, you're doing these little class quests, and then you can do the main one.
Right.
I got reminded of this when I was playing the beta, actually, and I wanted to go Dead Mines, and then people asked me if I had the quest, and I was like, no. And then I was like, wait, okay, I wasn't questing in Westfall, so that's gonna take me a little bit of time to catch up on. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
So yeah, dungeons. What comes to mind for me besides the player cap that we talked about is this isn't like groundbreaking, but I really like the idea of the tier armor. I know like BFA's done away with the tier sets, but I like how the dungeons can drop the tier 0 armor, and then later on in Classic you can upgrade it. I think it's cool that you can get a matching set from the dungeons, and it's a good way to show off that like you have a status symbol that you farmed up this matching set. But going back to more important things,
especially without transmog.
Yeah, like you can just you sit on the Iron Forge bridge corner in your matching set if you're like, oh. What I think is interesting, there are different layouts. Like if you play BFA, you might be like, man, like BRD is so windy and confusing. That's what all the dungeons were like in Classic. Blizzard's revamped some of them, like UBRS and Warlords got really streamlined, and Scholomance, Mists of Pandaria. But all the original dungeons were like very weird and windy, and they had lots of wings, and you couldn't just, there's no
map, right?
There's no map. Yeah.
No map. You can't just be like, I want to do this wing of the dungeon. There's no, you just sort of going all over the place. And there's only one dungeon difficulty, so there's no, you might be like, oh, I'm doing Scholomance normal. That's, it's so easy. I just blew through it on my alt pug and mop, but that's not the case in Classic. Like every dungeon has one difficulty. The ones that are higher levels are more challenging than the lower level ones. Although if you do it under geared and leveled, everything is challenging. But yeah, there's no hard mode versus easy mode. It's just this is the dungeon.
Yep.
So
right.
Yeah.
You know what comes to mind for me? No summoning stones.
Oh yeah,
that's true.
I mean, the stones exist. They're called meeting stones right outside the instance, which is actually a good marker if you're not really sure where the entrance is. If you see the stone, that's a good indication. But yeah, you can't use them to summon your party members.
When did those stones start getting used as summoning stones?
I think it's Burning Crusade.
Maybe BC, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think I remember doing that outside of Magister's Terrace.
TBC, a lot of people are saying.
Fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes us warlocks even more important.
Oh,
yes, Eddie is feeling very important.
Yes. It's not like I'm already only being invited to be able to summon people inside the raids.
Those help stones are great too.
Oh yeah, that's true. And we have different ranks of hellstones too, right?
Yeah, there's like ranks of everything.
Yeah. Imagine making 40 hellstones. Because you can't make a soul well.
People like rank 1 healthstone.
You
I
made...
don't like you. You get the bad
Yeah,
healthstone.
you get the bad one.
I think that the loot rewards, it's a really different philosophy than BFA, which is good to touch on. Like we're so used to everything being an epic and it Titan forges, but in classic WoW, most drops from dungeons were rare, and the epics had a 1% chance and usually did really weird things. Like there was this LBRS ring called Mark of the Dragon Lord that had some sort of mana shield, and it had like a little purple swirly thing around you. So when you saw an epic, it was a really big deal. But that wasn't necessarily, oh, this epic is like 10 item level higher and has the best itemization. The epic just meant it sort of had a rare drop and usually looked pretty cool. The interesting part is that you wanted these dungeon drops over raid drops based on your spec, because the itemization was so weird in classic WoW. So if a dungeon drop had a lot of hit, for example, and you're a melee class, you may want that. Or if another dungeon drop just like rolled a bunch of shadow damage and you're a warlock, that would be really good for you. So dungeons are not just something you run once and you hope to get a weekly cache and this loot can like proc a high Titan Forge thing. Like there were bosses that you definitely wanted to farm in a dungeon on certain classes, because that would be like your best in slot for phase 1. So yeah, really different than BFA.
Very different.
I see a question in the class about word class quest won't be in classic as a question mark. If you're referring to mount quests, they will all be there.
Oh, they won't. Well, they take Dire Maul, so you can't do all of them. But I think I think Sunken Temple, it's vague. I feel like Sunken Temple would be in at launch, but if you go by when they were added in the patch, they would be added phase 3 or 4. But then based on the AMA, they made it seem like the content should come when it's complete. So I'm like, I don't know.
Okay, I didn't realize he was asking if at launch, but in general they would be. Okay, but that's a good point. That's a good thing to keep in mind. In that case, does that mean that it's best to get a mount the regular ways? I mean, you still have the different class quests for your specific pets, for example. So you still have those as a warlock.
Well, I mean, the issue is that the mounts take you into Dire Maul, and that's
it's not available
until phase 2. But like everything else, I think will be around. So I mean, I guess. I mean,
so if it's tied to a dungeon,
I feel like the average person might have to weigh like how fast they can grind out the gold. Do they have enough time to do this before phase 2? But I feel like you'll have a lot of extra, like you have more time to sort of not have to worry about wasting the gold on a mount for phase 1. But I think you definitely want a fast mount for phase 1.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. If you have to wait, then maybe it's not worth waiting for the warlock mount. Maybe it's better to go for a regular epic one, because that one costs gold as well. Like it's a quest line, sure, but there's still gold they need to put in.
It could get expensive. Same with the paladin mount.
Yeah, plus you still need to find a group to, kill all the bosses. It's not just like, oh, I paid this vendor gold and now I've got a mount.
Right.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Anything else? Oh, also loot distribution in BFA, dungeon loot defaults to the personal loot system where you get an item, and then if you already have an item that the game thinks is equivalent or better, you can trade it to others. But in Classic, there are several different looting systems, although people usually default to need before greed in dungeons. And if you ninja loot because of the community system, you generally get pretty ostracized.
Yep.
But there's different, like you can have free-for-all, master loot, group loot, round robin, all sorts of different things. And another thing to keep in mind is that, this is important with loot. So because you don't get a bonus for using your armor type, people are after some pretty wacky gear. So for example, like a paladin might want like a helm that had a cloth helm that has a bunch of plus healing on it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's not like oh my god they took my item. It's like no, that's actually like people
Yeah.
that use spell power wanted cloth regardless of who they were, or like hunters wanted leather
Everything.
items. Like hunters want everything because it's like, oh, I need this for my stat stick, oh I need this. They just they want
Yep.
everything.
Yep.
So that I feel like that might be a surprise for people. It's not like, oh, I like cloth wearers have to compete with a lot of people
Yep.
for their drops.
All
and
healers.
dungeons. Yep. And DPS.
And DPS. And DPS.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Speaking of dungeons too, there's also the whole attunement portion.
Oh
of it,
yeah.
and,
Oh, yeah.
Certain
That's a big one.
instances require keys
Mm-hmm.
that you can't access unless you have the specific key.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, UBRS is big
UBRS
slog.
comes to mind. Scholomance.
Yeah, you can't
Armory.
do the second half of Scholomance if you don't have the key.
Right.
Yeah.
Can't do it. Yeah. How many times have groups gathered outside and then they realize nobody has the key?
Right.
It's like, what do we do?
And a lot of people might talk about how BFA may not be alt friendly because of AP grinds and whatnot. Well, in Classic, there is nothing as such. Like, there is no advantage for having a main except for the fact that you can send yourself gold, I guess. But speaking of sending things to your alts, I noticed on beta, when I sent something to my alt, it still took an hour. The game doesn't realize it's my own character? Is it meant to be like that?
I think that's another change. Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So
do
I
you know
didn't
more?
instantly get the mail. I didn't realize that's something that changed later on. I thought your own, because I know with the guild thing, I think that the first time that happened with instant guild mail was when they created the whole level system for guilds. I think that was the first time that happened. I remember they called it Gmail or something. But sending mail to yourself, I thought was always instant, but I guess not. Somebody in the chat says own account mail was TBC, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh.
Okay.
That is useful to know.
Yeah, that's good to know. Because I remember I was thinking I'm going to quickly send a bag to my alt because, I wanna have some bags for leveling on beta. And then I ran to the mailbox and there's nothing there. And I was like, did I type the wrong name or what happened?
Right.
Yeah.
And then I got it an hour later.
Yeah, going back to that whole like bank alt discussion.
Yeah.
I remember now, like you would get on the bank alt, then you would take the items and trade it to someone in your guild. Like suppose you're in a raid and you're like, oh my god, we ran out of fire protection potions, like we need to distribute them. You would get on the bank alt, trade them to somebody, and then that person would go to the raid because it would be faster than mailing it to your main and having it be an hour delay.
Yeah. It didn't occur to me that mailing yourself will take time. So that was good to know, good lesson.
So these are good things for me to remember too when I'm telling people like, what should you do day one or what should you keep in mind? It's like, like don't mail stuff to your alts and expect to get it right away.
Yeah, because if you mail to your alt, that takes an hour and then they mail it back, that's another hour. That's at least 2 hours to get your item back if you're not trading.
Yep.
That's true, yeah. Absolutely.
So let's talk classes a bit. Let's talk healers first. So there are some things that are across the board the same with classes changing, but I think it's important to mention for healers that only 3 classes could resurrect out of combat without a cooldown: Paladins, Priest, and Shaman. And Druids had the battle res, but they couldn't, just res everyone one by one after a wipe, and there was no mass res.
Oh yeah.
Right.
No mass res.
Are only, limited to their battle res, so that could be a reason why people would choose maybe a priest healer over a druid healer in a 5-man group, unless the group already has a shadow priest or maybe a ret paladin that could res.
Or prot paladin, like you didn't paladin, with undead.
But yeah, usually people will pair a druid. Yeah.
That led to some really weird things in raids because you couldn't mass res. If you wanted to save time between wipes, you would usually you're useful again, Anna. You would soulstone the healer. So after the wipe, the healer would pop up, and then the healer could res another healer, and then the 2 healers could res 2 more people, and so on.
Yeah.
Or the hunters could use feign death to survive a wipe, and then use their goblin jumper cables to try to shock a healer, although that could fail. So, but yeah, it's very important. Like, you can't mass res.
Yep.
So the healers would res the other healers first, and then probably the first healer would need to stop and drink because they would run out of mana, and then they would res more people, and so on. So resing everyone was a tedious process.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Was mass res first introduced with that whole guild system?
I feel like it was.
Because I feel like there was a certain level that your guild needed to reach, and then you had mass
Yeah, I
resurrection.
think it was like level 10 or 20. You can unlock guild mass res.
And then later on, they added the specific abilities to the different healer classes.
Yeah, when they toned down the whole idea of guild perks and they just gave it to healers.
Oh yeah, mass summon was a thing too for an expansion or two.
Yeah.
And then that was removed.
Another thing I think BFA people be surprised by is that paladins are for the alliance and shamans are for the horde.
Yes.
And this led to some like different balance things happening in raids. Paladins were basically buff bots, so they spend most of the fight just like buffing people, and one of their buffs was a threat. It reduced your threat. So that was very useful for DPS.
Salvation. Yeah,
salvation. So shamans were limited to the horde. They did not have salvation, so there were more aggro issues. But they had really good totems like Wind Fury totems, which melee DPS and tanks as well also liked. So they were also, the totem buffs were not raid wide, so you needed to stick all your shamans in different parties and then group people by who would benefit from the totem the most.
There'd be a lot of things like that, right? That would be group wide.
Yeah, a lot of stuff is party wide. Even things like, leader of the pack getting 3% crit, or I think.
Did you have to buff per group as well? Like if you were a paladin, you'd have to buff each group?
Yeah, that's why they were spending the whole time just buffing people. Yeah.
The greater blessings are per class. So if you select one warrior with the greater blessing of might, every warrior would get buffed, but you'd have to go through each class.
I don't think every one has an equivalent. Like I don't think Kings has maybe I misread the database, but I think there are a few that it has to be individual. But yeah, they all last for like 15 minutes or 5 minutes. And they all
are they that short? I forgot about that.
So you need symbol of kings in your bag to do a greater blessing. So if you run out, or like if you need an ironwood seed for rebirth. So if you're like, oh sorry, I can't battle res, like I ran out of seeds. Quick, like drop a bot and have someone like find in the middle.
Priest buffs are like that too. They need reagents. For fortitude and everything.
Yeah, so there are a lot of things you need reagents for, which you don't need anymore in BFA. Also, I want to highlight down ranking again. Healers will we mentioned this before with leveling, but healers may use weaker spells if they want to conserve mana or simply get a cast off faster, and there's like a pretty good consensus on what spells you definitely want to downrank in a raid, which we have guides to. Also, I want to highlight that priests in Classic WoW, each race had different racials, but priests got 2 additional ones, and the really OP one was dwarf priests got Fear Ward. That was really useful to use on a tank, how they can just break out of the crowd control, like Nefarian, for example. Everyone had 2 extra abilities, which made dwarf priests very high in demand.
Yep, great in PvP too.
Let's see. Also, this goes in general. Mitigation stats important. There are encounters where your raid needs resistance gear, like Ragnaros or Huhuron, and when everyone has resistance gear, this means that while they might soak and take less damage from a boss's magic attack, if they do something stupid like get cleaved, they will have fewer stats like stamina, which means that if they do something dumb, like you as a healer they are squishier, you need to help them out, and if you as a healer are wearing resistance gear, your stats will be weakened as well, so your output may not be as good as usual. So it's a chain reaction of things being stressful.
Yeah. Just adds to the fun.
Yeah. So let's talk about tanks. Basically, there are three options: druids, paladins, and warriors. But the way class design worked, Blizzard balanced warrior tanks the best, with more options like defensive cooldowns or tier sets with proper itemization. But feral druids can take some encounters well, and they have really great armor. So in some cases, they actually are better. And there are also prot paladins. You can play them if you want, but they are lacking a lot of toolkit options that the warrior does have. So
Like they don't have a taunt, right?
No taunt, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a big one.
That's a pretty big deal. That's why they are generally not brought to raids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna make a joke how, like, with the MDI, it's like, oh, we're seeing prop warriors everywhere in BFA still, so maybe not much has changed.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is kind of different. Like, at least in BFA, for average content, there are the 6 tanks, and they try to make sure that every tank has a different sort of, personal cooldown they can use for active mitigation, and every tank has a tier set with tank specific set bonuses. But in classic, it's more wobbly. It's like the warrior is like the main type of tank you're meant to have, and druids and paladins can tank, but are lacking in different ways. So you can't really be a paladin main tank in classic.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they're not bad in 5-man groups.
I was
Especially the
I was
undead.
just thinking that. I've
Especially-
heard they're pretty good in
right.
dungeons.
But even still, if you're tanking as a prop pally in a 5-man group, you still have to do a lot of prep work beforehand. You have to really go above and beyond, like with buffs and consumables and making sure your talents are just right. Whereas a warrior could be a little bit more lax, I would say.
Yeah,
in a
like
similar situation.
paladins have great AoE threat, and they can be good against undead because they have several abilities that do more damage against undead. But not having a taunt is a big thing, especially with how threat works in classic. Basically, any ability generates threat, and all players can generate threat, and threat is only wiped by a player death. And if a non-tank player is high on threat, then grats, you now have aggro, and there's no like tricks of the trade. It's just very different. So you need to, for the tank to have good aggro, or else your DPS will just be like sitting around afraid to cast because you don't want to rip aggro and die.
Definitely.
Especially, at least paladins have the salvation buff, but on the horde side, shaman have tranquil air totem, but that shares the totem with wind fury. So it may not always be viable to totem twist, because that takes a lot of mana.
Yeah.
What else is useful with tanks? Oh yeah, so going back to threat, as a result of threat being important, tanks would collect different sets for like the threat focus, dealing as much damage as possible, getting aggro set, and then a more defensive set that's based on mitigation and getting things, like defense or increasing your resistances, your health pool. There's not a lot of active mitigation cooldowns in Classic, so you built up your mitigation through passive stats instead. Oh yeah, also talking about gear, if you are tanking as a druid, your best weapon at the start is a level 43 BOE.
Really?
Yeah, it's the Warden Staff, and then the second best weapon used for threat is a mace from Gnomrigan. So there's some pretty crazy itemization.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's what's also makes Classic so interesting, that there's so many random places where you can get really good loot.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's
cool.
kind of like a big difference now too, is where you mentioned that mace from Gnomrigan, where I guess that's listed as the pre-raid bis.
Yeah.
Back in the day, those lists didn't really exist as extensively as they do now. It's like, okay, go here, get this, do this to become 100% ready to raid. So yeah, that was another thing to point out, kind of like differences between now and back then.
Yeah. I also want to highlight consumables. Like usually with a tank, we're just like, oh yeah, use this, just put stamina on something, that's fine. You got your flask and your food. But Classic had so many weird consumables, and a ton of them would stack. And as a tank, you wanted to have a lot of defensive things, but you also wanted to increase things like your agility because you would get attack power. So you would have tanks using, for example, Elixir of the Mongoose that increases your agility and critical hit by 2%. But then you'd also have them using defensive things as well. And
Mm-hmm.
you would also have them using engineering grenades and dynamite to generate extra threat, especially AoE. Like you could throw dense dynamite and inflict damage to everyone in AoE range. Plus, potions were
Mm-hmm.
not limited to one per battle, so you could just like burn through, one every 1-2 minutes. So yeah, consumables are very different. Like you're saying with prop
Oh.
paladins, like a prop paladin could, stack a ton of things to increase their threat output.
Yeah.
But they would need a lot of consumables, and if you die, grats, you need to reapply them all.
Very
Oh.
good point. Yep.
Expensive.
Yep, very
Mm-hmm.
expensive.
Yep.
But yeah, let's talk about DPS a bit. This was the final one I got out.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is interesting with DPS? I think the most interesting concept that people might be surprised by is that there were the concept of a pure DPS versus a hybrid. And the idea was that if you are a class and you can only DPS, you should be able to DPS better than,
Yeah.
say, like a druid, because the druid can tank or heal, and it wouldn't be fair if the hybrid was better at multiple roles
Yeah.
over the class that can do one thing.
Mm-hmm.
So like a pure DPS was like a mage or a hunter, like a rogue or a warlock. But there were some unconventional classes where, you should have fun, you should play what you want, and if your raid had space for them, they could actually provide useful buffs for your raid. So for example, if you have a lot of warlocks, bringing a shadow priest is good because it applies this debuff called shadow weaving, where you can deal 15% more shadow damage. Everyone in the raid can. So you could bring one shadow priest to buff warlocks, or if you have
Okay.
like a melee group already
Mm-hmm.
set up with something like Wind Fury, if you have a cat druid, it increases your melee critical strike chance of the party by 3%.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you already have like the shaman buffing the melee group, well, if you have that be the enhancement shaman, then it can have talents that make the melee totems provide more benefits. So
Mm-hmm.
there's so while hybrids might have difficulty with like sustained DPS, even though they can be really fun and bursty in PvP, they can provide interesting buffs to help the pure DPS out, and if they don't die, increase the value of the raid. I feel like survivability is very important
Yeah.
if you're a hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, for sure.
Well, looking for shadow priests
yep.
or shadow
And
priests.
it needs a
I just need
shadow priest.
one
Yeah.
to buff me and
Yeah.
my fellow warlocks.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely good to PvP with one as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would think we should also talk about debuff management, because there were only 16 slots available on the boss.
Oh yeah.
So and you had to watch what you were doing. So like you were not going to be an arms warrior with Mortal Strike, because that would put a physical dot on the boss, and that could, push off the debuff that was giving all the warlocks more shadow damage, and
Yeah.
that would not be good.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Or like if a rogue was using like a poison that applied a dot, that would be not great. So warlocks have a ton of useful debuffs they can put up, like Curse of Shadow and Curse of Elements. So it helps caster DPS. Like mages have Winter's Chill or Ignite for Frost or Fire. Hunters have Hunter's Mark. There's lots of buffs, and your raid needs to agree upon that in advance, or else you're going to have some really strange things happening, or really bad stuff happening, like Sunder armor falling off.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
So you
Yep.
can't have too many warlocks either.
Yeah,
More
well,
dots.
there are like four. I think there's like four pretty good buffs they can apply. Like shadow elements, recklessness, and shadow bolt.
And the regular dots also count towards the 16, right?
Yeah, so
So
like
you
you
shouldn't
wouldn't just
have
want to be
multiple
spamming
affliction.
corruption.
Yeah.
No, yeah. So you'd want to definitely hold off with that. Also, I think it's good to point out, just talking about stats and gear, that a lot of stats were split by melee versus ranged versus spell. So you need to like read the tooltip before you equip it. Like there's spell hit versus hit. So you don't just want to be like, oh, like this item is hit, yeah, and then it's like, oh, it's for like a caster. So you need to read things before. If you're a hybrid, you're equipping something, but it actually is for like a caster spec, not a melee spec.
Yeah, really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crit strike, hit, everything.
Yep. Also, going back to the best in slot list, we touched upon this a little with the healers, but if you were like a caster, especially that all your spells were like one school of damage, like warlocks with shadow or like mages with frost, and you were good at not dying, you like a lot of your pre-raid best in slot was going to the auction house and finding items that were just BOEs that had a ton of like extra spell damage. Like warlocks were just like, they wanted everything of shadow wrath. Like, no stamina, nothing else, just plus shadow wrath. Now,
glass cannon.
Yeah. So that's a philosophy that you probably wouldn't really, see in BFA, and also the idea that it's not just like look for the item with the most spell power, but that there are items that offer one type of spell power that are like better for certain specs than like an all over item.
Yeah.
So it's just something to keep in mind. Also, your set bonuses did not always provide DPS increases, especially for hybrids. Like they try to do all sorts of different things. Like here's one bonus that's good for PvP. Here's one bonus as a rogue that increases your armor. Here's one that just lets you vanish. Here's one that's really good for PvE. Here's like a weird
really mixed.
thing that gives you like extra evasion. So it's all over the place. So while it's good to have 8 pieces like a status symbol to sit in Ironforge, it's not always your best. You shouldn't just go and try to collect it. Like I know back in Manila, a lot of my friends really wanted tier sets because it's like, oh, epics, I want my tier set. But it's like, no, like having the clown suit of the mismatching gear usually provides a lot more DPS. Plus, you don't need to spend PKP on dungeon drops or BOEs.
Yeah, off pieces were often very good, even later on when we had proper set bonuses. A lot of times, the best optimized way of doing things is to have a certain number of set pieces, and then the better off pieces with the better stats. So I guess definitely. With a bad set bonus, it's even more relevant to look for those off pieces.
Yeah, especially in early WoW, where a lot of Molten Core loot was just like, we're gonna give you some fire resistance because
Why
you need
not?
this, and you're like, and it's like, oh, well, actually, I'd rather have this dungeon drop that is gonna give me like weapon skill instead, or let me reach my hit cap. Weapon skill also very important for melee. That stat is not really around now, but like I don't know. Like I just used H-core leather gloves forever in Classic, and you definitely want weapon skill, so you can deal more damage on your glancing blows, and also not miss not miss, and you crit strike more. So lots of reasons for weapon skill. Like that was super OP.
For classes that use multiple weapons, a good thing could then be to consider using different weapons, like swap between different ones to skill all of them up. So you're not sitting there at max level one day, a few weeks later, and realize like, oh wait, I have skill 1 as an axe.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I'm a rogue. Like I got this weapon upgrade, but my weapon skill is like a few points lower, so I can't, use this.
Can't hit the boss, yeah.
Yeah, that's not good.
That's another reason why some people may choose to roll human, for example, because humans get the weapon specialization racials in Mason Sword Mastery.
Oh, so, yeah, I forgot about that.
That could be one reason why somebody would choose to play a human over another class.
But yeah, that's a good thing to keep in mind while leveling. While leveling is probably the best time because then you can actually use the weapon to kill random mobs. So that could be good.
Yeah. Or like trolls in PvE have bow specialization, which is, like, oh, your bow weapons have extra.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I think we have a few more of these articles coming. The ones I still want to cover are like raids, gearing. We sort of covered gearing now. And guilds. I feel like for raids, people need to realize that you needed 40 players to do things with. The loot was different. You had to use DKP. Not the also like not nearly as much loot dropped per boss.
No.
Right,
So
yeah.
it's not going to be like,
That's a very good
like,
point.
dynamically scaling, you get showered in loot if you have 40 people. That's not how it works.
It was
No
like
bonus rolls either.
no.
Oh god,
Oh,
yeah, no
bonus
bonus
rolls.
rolls.
Mm-hmm.
You need all the consumables. Repair bots were different. You can't you don't just drop like a portable mailbox and thing that just stays put forever. You need the reagents to bring to the raid because you'll be buffing people nonstop. Buffing people took lots of mana, so you need to drink. So then, as the mage, you need to be making more food.
Mm-hmm.
It's a chain, and the trash was really difficult as well. Like I know in BFA, it's just sort of like flavor, but those core hounds were no joke.
Yep.
Oh gosh.
I need to put a novel article live right now. So if you guys want to talk about something for like a minute or two, I just need to grab an image and put this live because I scheduled the collab before I knew we were doing the
that's
show.
okay. That's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
What
we could jump into the next topic here, and then Perk can chime in when she's able to.
Yeah.
Sure.
Things that people should consider or think about when you first log in. So you log in, everything. Wait, let me actually. I'm gonna put Perk's microphone a little bit lower. Or do you want to mute yourself during that time? Because the typing is kind of loud.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I don't mind, but I was thinking maybe people mind. Okay, there you go. So yeah, Quissy, what comes to mind first when thinking about character creation and just the first time you log in, you actually got into the server that you wanted to be on. You're gonna start your classic experience. What should people think about?
The first thing that always comes to mind for me is to make sure my key bindings are all set and my
good one. Mm-hmm.
my UI is set up appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these can be changed in your interface options in the menu.
Mm-hmm.
Right off the bat, a big thing for me is auto loot. It just makes
Yes, I agree.
looting a lot easier. So
Yeah.
that's right in your interface options. People should enable that right away.
Mm-hmm.
What else? Instant quest text is a big one that a lot of people utilize.
I noticed
by
that.
default.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, by default, the quest text does not appear instantly.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of
it's like writing it.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big thing people do, to save time.
Mm-hmm. Speaking
else?
of UI, do you know if it's possible to move over your UI from your current retail WoW to copy the binds? I mean.
Oh, I don't know because I know a lot of people were saying in the last stress test to kind of make sure you set up your UI and everything. So I don't know. I don't know. Somebody in the chat is saying you can.
Mm-hmm. Somebody in chat says that you can copy binds, so that's interesting. Because I'm sure we're not going to have, even if you are going to or planning to use add-ons, I'm sure.
I'm back.
Oh, welcome back.
Welcome back.
Maybe not all add-ons will be identical to the ones that you're using on retail. So then it's a question of what should you use to make your UI feel as natural as possible. Like, for example, I use Bartender for my binding. I think it's easier and cleaner to use that. I don't know if Bartender will be a working add-on for Classic.
Yeah, no, there's a website.
We also I'm checking the
website you could check. Yeah.
Yeah. We
apparently they have Bartender for Classic.
Oh, great. There
Cool.
you go.
Cool.
Yeah.
In that case, you might be able to just copy your UI over, and hopefully that works out with not too many issues. But yeah, so auto loot was a thing. UI in general, keybinds, maybe how your UI is placed as well. The quest text, that's a good one too, because that could take a little bit of time if the page is full of text and it's just slowly writing everything out. What else should you think about at level 1? You can't create a guild, right? To create a guild, you have to wait until level 10.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So no guild right away.
Mm-hmm. What else?
Get your sound settings sorted out.
Sound settings, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's important.
Loop the music.
Adding, I mean, well, this is relevant for Classic, but like adding the friends to your friend list. Like you might be saying, "Oh yeah, we all rolled our characters 2 weeks ago," but that's not going to be on your friend list. I don't think so. Would it be?
I don't know. So on the beta, the friends list, or yeah, like the Battle.net friends list was separate and completely different from my main game. But I'm not sure if that's how it's meant to be. I don't know if it's meant to be a separate game like that, or if your Battle.net friends will still be there. So I guess we'll see. I'm not sure actually.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. In the beta, it was separate, like you said. You know, to add people as a friend separately.
Yeah, so somebody says in the last stress test, the Battle.net friends did work, actually. So we are supposed to have the Battle.net friends in.
I would also say, like, when you log on the first time to, when you're done with your session, make sure you have a Hearthstone set up and that you're also logged out by the inn so you can get rested XP.
Yes, that's a good one.
For sure. And somebody in the chat mentioned learning professions. So yeah, if you're not trying to level as quickly as possible, it is a really good idea to pick up a profession. Just because as you progress throughout the world in the starting zones, the same materials in the starting zones usually complement the level at which you're currently at in your profession.
Yeah. And plus, you don't want to be just like brainlessly like vendoring, reagents and be like, oh, I forgot to train first aid. I actually need this cloth I sold.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, especially those secondary professions.
Yep.
First aid is good, and gathering professions can also be really good for that initial
really
boost.
Good for gold.
Either by straight up vendoring them or by putting them on the auction house. Can be good. So skinning and mining, for example, could be pretty useful.
You should also try to get bags.
Yes.
Nothing is really account wide, so it's not like, well, like in BFA when you rolled an alt, like your mounts are account wide. You can send some bags are account wide. None of that is the case in Classic. Also, it'll be your first character, so it's not like, oh, I'll just hit up my level 120 friend to mail me a bag. That's not, you'll be starting from scratch.
Oh, that's a good one. I see something in the chat. Get a wand as fast as possible if you're a caster.
Yeah.
Yes. That's actually really crucial, because if you don't have a wand, that means you have to use your actual spells, which might you very fast, and you also want to skill up your wand as fast as possible to make it usable and actually do damage.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, wands are very OP. If you can get them as quickly as possible, it'll greatly benefit you in terms of leveling.
Yeah, like we mentioned before, there are class quests, and those start at low levels, like, even level 10, and you want to start doing them because they can teach you abilities like, bear form or like cure poison, like very useful things. Some of the quests are just like whatever rewards, but some are actually pretty good. So, yeah. And yeah, just, start talking to people, be nice, be social.
Be nice.
When you do hit 10, try setting up the guild for yourself, and or the bank vault.
Either join a guild or create your own with your friends. Or if no friends, you can find friends, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who are playing alone, wondering, what am I supposed to do? Who am I supposed to play with? Don't download Classic LFG. What else? Mm,
Well, when you start hitting level 10 and the level 10-20 range, you can start thinking about doing dungeons like Dead Mines or Wailing Caverns, or I guess if your
uh-huh.
Horde Ragefire is more, it's right there. And you want to do
Mhm.
those because those do have good gear, they do have good quests, they give a lot of experience. Dead Mines is fun to reach with the Defias Pillagers, killing everyone. Heads up. But yeah, you want to start doing dungeons and leveling. As you start leveling up, you can learn higher profession ranks, and you want to do that because you don't want to be the person that just goes AFK or like it's just like mindlessly uh crafting the same thing and you're like, why isn't my skill cap increasing? That's like, oh well, you hit 75, you now need to train to hit 150.
Yeah.
So you need to keep going back to the trainers, as well as the class trainers, if it makes sense. Like you don't need to train every ability every 2 levels because the gold adds up, but
Mhm.
some abilities which we cover in our leveling guides are really good, and we tell you to go back and prioritize them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Something else I just noticed as a warlock might be the same for hunters, I'm not sure. But your pets have abilities that scale up by buying an item from a vendor. So that's something which is different from BFA as well. So you may want to keep track of that to make sure that your pets have the abilities that you want them to use and that they're ranked up just like your own spells.
Yep. Hunters also have a pet loyalty system, so make sure your pets are not sad with you and do the quest to actually get your pets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And each
Happiness.
one eats specific foods. So certain
Oh.
certain pets won't eat certain foods. So
Uh-huh.
you have to
Yeah, and they all do
make sure.
different things. So
Mhm.
like like some pets are better at different types of content than other types of pets. Like there are defensive pets and offensive pets. So
Mm-hmm.
your pet in BFA may not be as versatile as the classic version of your pet.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Just something to keep in mind. Yeah.
And
Yep.
don't forget to buy ammo.
Oh yeah.
That's a big one.
Yep. Yeah, ammo, and also quivers and storage. That's the thing. Also, in classic, like
Mm-hmm.
having the right quiver will increase your attack. Sorry, your
Mhm.
attack speed, or having better bullets makes you deal more DPS. So
Mm-hmm.
that's something to keep an eye out for as well. There are more slots you need to fill up with gear and stats.
Mm-hmm.
Right on.
That's another thing. If you can afford more of those reagents, but you don't want to carry them, you can buy some extra, send it to a bank alt, and then later on send it back from the bank alt just to have it sitting in your mailbox instead, because you're probably more likely to find a mailbox than you are a vendor that is selling the items that you want in case you run out at some point.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's a really good one.
Yeah.
Then you just have it sitting in mailbox. That could help.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of different spells that we may not think about that needs reagents that which don't anymore. Even things like mage portals.
Yeah.
Mm.
Very true. Major. That's another thing we should touch upon: transportation. No flying in classic.
Yes.
Um,
Surprise.
No flying.
and writing is not nothing is account wide. And a lot of mages have portals to the major cities and teleports, but a lot of options we're used to, like Hearthstone's related to certain expansions that take you to Dalaran, a lot of that stuff is not present. And even with flight paths, the flight masters are more spread out. It's not the same as Cataclysm.
Yeah.
And there's no heirloom item to teach you all the flight paths on an alt as well.
Nope.
And as mentioned, like the maps are not as good. So it's not going to be like BFA where it's like, here's the portal room and like, here's the suggested route you should take. All that stuff is not present on Classic.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep. What else do we have? What else
Now,
should we think
the
about?
mounts at level 40.
Yes, first
Yep.
mount at level
and
40.
60. Yep.
A lot of
So yeah.
people might confuse that and think it's 20 because that's how it is now.
Yep.
But nope, it's 40.
Yeah, I'm just
The
thinking of it.
I was thinking about transportation. Yeah, the boats. There's boats and zeppelins if you're on the Horde side.
Mm-hmm.
Take zeppelins to travel between the continents or from one city to another.
Mm-hmm.
Same with boats for Alliance.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
if you AFK too long, you're just gonna like go back to the other continent. And they're in really weird places. Like you have to go Menethil Harbor takes you to Theramore,
Mm-hmm.
and like Aberdeen has a really big port, and that takes you to Stormwind. So it's like BFA tries to put everything in the same hub in a major city, but in Classic everything is spread out all over the place.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I see a question of something about where to get the first wand. I believe there's one for enchanting, which you can get
Your
pretty
priest
early.
leveling guide. I'm pulling up the priest guide. I think yeah. The lesser magic wand requires 10 skill in enchanting, and is created by enchanters.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So that's
and
probably a best bet. And
yeah,
you can also get the mats by the enchanting mats by having tailoring on the side that you can disenchant.
yeah. There's also some with questing wands like
Mm-hmm.
Spark of the People's Militia. You can start getting in the 10 through 19 range, or it's like every kind of second starting zone has a wand you can get from a quest.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, you should find one eventually if you just keep on questing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or make friends with an enchanter.
Yep.
So
yeah, what else? Important things. I think that's it for me now. Can't
yeah,
think of
I mean,
anything
like
else.
you don't want to list every little thing because then it's gonna be like, okay, well, what's the important thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. I just
What's
wrote
the
a book
TLDR?
now. Yeah.
But yeah, I figure because Quissy writes a ton of Wowhead guides, we can maybe highlight some guides we think people will find most useful in like the first day or week of Classic. Like personally, I think that people will really want to use our leveling guides because they tell you like what's the order you should use your talents in, what abilities you should train or skip, and where you can get things like wands easily. And then we're using our class guides, especially the best in slot pages, to form your shopping list and see what you want from the higher level dungeons. Like even like Maradon, which is not considered a max level dungeon, has really good a ring for some melee classes. So as you start getting higher, using our best in slot guides for that, and Quissy's profession guides, which tell you how to level professions. I think those are also very good to use for this first week of Classic.
Indeed.
So
Also, I think the Hydraxian Waterlord rep guide might be a big one because as people are, especially next week with the world first race, people are going to be rushing into Molten Core, and you can't summon Ragnaros unless you douse all the runes within Molten Core. In order to do that, you need an item, which is a reputation reward from the Hydraxian Waterlords at least revered. So I think that might be of interest to a lot of people just to kind of maximize their efficiency and see the best way in which they could achieve that level of reputation.
Does everyone need that reputation?
No. How just
one person?
There's a cooldown on it, so
okay.
Typically they'll have like 8 total. I think it's 8 runes that need to be doused.
Okay.
They each have like an hour cooldown. So if you have like 8 people to douse them, that would
be ideal.
That would be the most efficient. Yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
Yep. Yeah, and this is actually covered
7. Sorry.
Covered in Quissy's reputation guide. I'm looking and it's like, please note this has cooldowns. You should bring lots of people. But yeah, you'll be like grinding and killing lots of elementals to get your rep up that way. I also think that the dungeon guides will be useful, especially because there aren't maps. You don't know how to reach certain dungeons easily, or like what floor you're on in the dungeon. In our guides, Quissy did a lot of these too, like have very obvious sections being like, this is how you reach the dungeon.
Yeah.
So we cover all that in the dungeon guides. And yeah, we have, there's tons of guides on the site. A lot of them are for max level stuff. Like, you're not going to hit level 60 in the first day, but once you do hit level 60, we have things like gold making guides, or, raid boss debuff management, or, how to get, like attuned to various max level dungeons, or, best macros, which is, you don't exactly need a macro at level 1, but when you're more max level, you do, like how outdoor PvP works. So we have a ton of guides, but I think for the first day. You know, you want the class guides, the leveling and profession.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Those are definitely the most relevant the first day.
Yeah. I know some people ask, so just as a note, like we're still working on stuff for Classic WoW and Wowhead. Like the beta never had level 45 through 60 testable.
Yeah.
So our client got like no data on maps and drop rates. So we're relying on people actually hitting that range and sending us data to make that part of the site more complete. We actually were adding some Thoughtbot data, but not all the data was relevant to 112, so we still need more. We're still working on adding stat weights. That's really complicated because the way the site's 15 years old, like we sort of have the same problems as WoW Classic. But we are still adding things to our character planner. Like we added random enchantments to the planner and our database, so you can actually see, you know, out of the 40, there's like billions of suffixes in the game. Like what are the 10 that this BOE item can roll, and what's the you know, highest amount of that stat? It's sort of like Titan forging, but not. So
yeah, like,
you know,
it's not
just like oh, like I want the item with Shadow Wrath. It's like, well, is this the item that can proc like 40 Shadow Wrath as opposed to 30 Shadow Wrath, stuff like that. So we've been adding a lot of these little features. We've added more filters to the database. You can like filter by weird procs or things that give you Thorn's effect with different schools of magic. We added a talent calculator to the gear planner, so you can, you know, select a talent that gives you extra hit, and then the like gear planner will reflect that extra hit on the page. So we've been busy with stuff besides the guides as well, and we also want to add like today in WoW to the classic thing that shows you the time until the instance resets. I think that would be fun.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
That would be useful.
Lots of exciting stuff on the way.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a cat. It's kind of saying hi, but not really. Just scratching the post. About the logging in, and I think Blizzard said that there were probably going to be some realm restarts, kind of. So just sitting on the login screen is not really going to work. Do we have any update on that?
I think they said they were planning on doing the restarts, but it wouldn't be right before the launch, because they like sort of the magic that you could be waiting and then the enter world button lights up. I'm trying to find the AMA because I think this was in the AMA. One sec.
Yeah, I think they discussed it.
The page is just taking a little bit to load. Let's see.
We all know streamers are gonna get in first, and us normal peeps are gonna play 10 hours later. Maybe it's time to press start stream button. Maybe that'll work. That'll do the damage.
There you go.
Yep, there's the solution.
Login.
Oh yeah, I found it. Will servers be brought down at some point before release, or will players be able to set a character select waiting for Enter World to activate?
Yeah.
We are likely to perform some kind of realm restarts or maintenance between now and launch. However, in the minutes leading up to launch, our plan is that the realms will be up and available, and the Enter World button will instantly light up once we're launched.
Cool. Okay.
So there we go. So maybe like not 4 hours in advance, but like 30 minutes in advance, you could do that. That would work.
Good to know.
Yeah, that's what people were saying, to try to log in 30 minutes beforehand at least.
So yeah,
cool.
We'll see. We're less than 24 hours now.
Yeah, indeed.
Final day.
23 hours. Is it 23 hours and a half now?
Yeah, just about.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just under 24 hours. It's happening. A lot of us did not think this would actually happen, but it is happening now. Yeah, dawn of the final day. Yes. Zelda days.
Incredible.
But yeah, I think this kind of covers everything that we wanted to talk about. But if there's anything else that you guys wanted to add to it, that is fine. We had a full show of just talking classic, and there's a lot more to say always. There's a huge world of things to talk about. Question is, what parts is relevant right now? We try to touch the topics that we think would be the most interesting and useful for you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. But yeah, now we just have to sit and wait. 23 hours and a half.
Yeah.
23 hours and a half. Chrissy, do you have any last minutes, or not last minute, last words to do with Classic? Anything that we did not discuss but you'd like to mention?
It's going to be interesting to see how people choose to level the most efficiently. I know Perk kind of mentioned this to me a few days ago, but bringing this up in some of the guides of the popular dungeon cleave strategy that's recently come up. Versus and before that it was like duo leveling is the best way to level quickly and efficiently. So it's at this point I think a lot of it is theory crafted. So I'm just really interested to see how things are going to pan out and what's really going to work out for those who are looking to speed level and race to 60.
If you're not speed leveling though, you should just have fun. Do all the zones. I really like the original way of questing better than Cataclysm because you really feel like you're just an explorer that is going around the world, like helping and learning. But in Cataclysm, like everything is a mess, and you sort of go from point A to point B to point C, very linear, and you're the hero fixing everything. And I think it's more just if you're going to commit to sort of leveling at your own pace and being slow and classic, I think it's good to be more creative and just enjoy the hubs and appreciate the different zone design and like quest philosophy than comparing it to BFA.
Yeah,
I'm also really excited about seeing the zones looking in their original state, like no Teldrassil on fire. I think that would be very nice.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, and everything pre-Cataclysm will be cool to see.
Yeah.
Any world PvP tips on a PvP server? Bring friends. Bring friends and outnumber the enemies.
in phase 2 is going to be a little tough, I think, if you're on a PvP server and you're leveling out in the open world. Just to be very aware of that, because that's when the honor system is getting implemented. But we won't have battlegrounds at that point. So a lot of people are going to take to the open world to get their honor. So that's something to keep in mind if you are leveling in phase 2.
And another thing that you can consider doing if you keep getting ganked is to look up another zone with the same level range, or simply finding people and spam some dungeons, maybe for an hour, maybe for 2, maybe for 3, just to like get away from that ganking period, because you don't want to maybe keep getting killed for 5 hours or whatever the time is that the ganker felt like wanting to kill people. That's right. I know I'll be considering doing that, because obviously if I'm streaming, there's a high chance of people wanting to come out and kill me over and over, especially in the later levels, maybe not so much in the initial levels. So a good thing then as a plan B could be to go into dungeons.
Absolutely agree with you on that.
I'm trying to look through the chat to see questions so I can read them out loud as well. Is it going to be possible to get into a server that is currently marked as full? It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. Yeah. It might be 1 hour queue. It might be 5 hours queue. We don't know exactly. It really depends on how many people give up trying to get into their main server of choice and end up going onto one of the other servers. There will definitely be queues. So if you want to avoid that, I would suggest going to one of the new servers that are being released tomorrow. Yeah, either that, or if you're European, the time is midnight anyways. Other option could be to just go to sleep, wake up in the morning, and then you probably don't have queues.
Do damage. Yeah.
If you wait for too long until evening time, then it's probably going to be queues again. But yeah, so that's probably the best thing you can do. And if you can't get into a server, do you guys have any tips on what people can do if they can't get into a server and they don't want to change server to another one? They're just gonna sit there in the queue.
Yeah, you just need to sit in the queue. I guess you could, research your class, or get on Discord or a voice chat program with the rest of your guild and just discuss stuff. But there's always issues with launch, and Blizzard has tried to have lots of stress tests to make this as smooth as possible, but there's always going to be something
Mm-hmm.
happening.
Yeah,
So
read some Wowhead
they've
guides.
they've been warning people that have had issues. So just expect the cues.
Yeah.
Blizzard is trying their best.
Mm-hmm. Watch streamers is another great one.
Yeah, watch Annie and Quissy.
Yeah, you can watch us. Are you going to be leveling on launch? I mean, sorry, are you going to be streaming on launch?
Oh,
Quissy.
I will be. Yeah, yeah.
There
I
you
do
go.
plan to be streaming.
There you
Yeah.
go. So you can.
And you as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So you can check us out. Oh, speaking of us, Quissy, do you have a plan of a specific server, or is that meant to be a secret?
Oh no, I'm gonna be on Fairlena, the
Okay.
one of the full servers. It's
Yep.
an Eastern PvP server,
Mhm.
NA. And
The streamer
I'm gonna
server.
be streamer server. I'm gonna be joining Stay Safe's guild. It's called Power,
Okay. Uh-huh.
and it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna definitely be a crazy week, but I'm up for the challenge.
Do you have a plan B server, or are you going with the Q tactic?
Probably the Q tactic, unless the guild decides to move.
Which I
But,
doubt.
Right.
Yeah, so I guess I'll have to deal with it if I do get into that situation.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's part of the experience, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. Especially if you get some people on voice and you're just talking through it, then it's not so bad. A
Yeah,
waiting
definitely.
simulator. Yeah. It's like classic waiting room still going, even though it's launched.
I'm gonna be on ATS, just
I love that
leveling
name.
with some friends from that I met, I think, starting in Burning Crusade. So
Oh, old
it'll
friends.
be nice and quiet.
Awesome.
I will not be streaming because I'll be taking lots of breaks to deal with the site being on fire. But yeah, it'll be nice. It's not a PvP server I won't have to worry about being ganked. And yeah, I have my original name from my rogue and then my current name from my rogue. I was
Nice.
originally Pericula, but it got taken when I transferred in Burning Crusade, so that's when I made Perk. So I've got a parry and a perk, and then I've got my priest, who in my head was this like Chandralar mage that turned Shadow Priest. So I made her as well. So I've got those three, and maybe I'll probably make my bank alt and my warrior alt when the servers when I can on at 10 a.m.
Yep.
Nice.
Sounds like a good plan. I'm planning to be playing on Shazra. That's an EU server. So I'm European, in case there was anyone who didn't know that. And Shazra is probably one of the fullest servers, but I really want to be there. And because I've announced being there and building my community and guild there, I want to stick to it. However, at launch time, I mentioned it earlier, since I do have multiple subscriptions, I may be sitting in the Shazra queue as I'm leveling on any random server just to have something to do, just to kind of like level through the first levels, so that I'm still playing the game, but I probably won't stay there. It would just be a temporary character. Maybe I'll even play a horde character for that temporary one. We'll see.
Oh wow!
Hey, look at
horde representation. The moon kid out again.
Yeah. Horde representation. So yeah, that's probably going to be my plan.
Yep.
Oh,
Awesome.
I see a resub from Lincoln. Also 20 months. Good evening.
Wow.
Good evening, Lincoln, and thank you so much for the 20 months. Thank you very, very much. Doing the dishonorable kills during World PvP. Yeah, so I do have that plan B that I mentioned earlier. If ganking becomes an issue and my friends are not enough, I will just jump into a dungeon so that I'm still progressing something. So that's my plan.
Good plan. And you'll be playing a warlock as your main?
Yes. What are you going to be playing?
I'm going to be playing a paladin.
A paladin, awesome.
Fully at max level.
Uh-huh.
Nice. Christina's like, no, I'm prod.
I like paladins. Paladin is my main alt. Can you say that?
Okay.
Yeah, my paladin is my main alt on retail. So paladins are cool.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love pallies. And Perk, your main is a rogue, you said?
Yep, the main's the rogue, and then second would be some sort of priest.
Cool.
But yeah, mainly have the rogue. I had a warlock that I rolled that I should get as well. But yeah, main's always the rogue.
Awesome.
Nice. Yeah.
I actually like the fact that Classic has fewer classes. I don't know.
Yeah.
It feels more, I don't know, personal almost. Like it feels a bit more identity
Yeah, it's
tied
like
to
you're
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I see what you mean. It's also like, oh well, like, oh use. I didn't roll my flavor of the month class. Like maybe roll the demon hunter because they're good. It's like I identify with the rogue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like you're that class. Because I was planning to initially maybe go mage actually, because mage was one of those classes that I always wanted to play, but I never did because it's very similar to warlock, and I like to kind of like be loyal to my main. So the only reason I started picking up paladin later on was because I can heal as a paladin. So I thought, okay, for the classic experience, maybe I should just go mage then, since I'm starting over anyways. But after a few, I don't know, after some time of thinking, and especially when the beta actually came out, I just found myself automatically picking a gnome warlock because that's what I created when I first played.
Right.
So it felt like the most natural thing. So that's what I'm going for.
Great.
But yeah,
Awesome.
I think we have covered everything that we wanted to say, and hopefully I was able to catch all of the questions in the chat as well. Arcane Tyrant also donated 100 bits. I just saw that now. So thank you.
Awesome.
Woo.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I like how you still have the moonkin like showing up.
Yeah, you can do a little dance. Yeah.
It's so cool that it's so big. I had no idea it's that big.
I know.
That's
it's like
awesome.
as big as me.
Yeah.
If I put them one on top of the other, it would be the same size.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think that's a wrap for today then. Sunday evening
Right.
or afternoon, I guess, for you guys. Sunday show feels very off, but still good. Classic
Yeah,
is coming
a lot
out
of people
tomorrow.
Watching. It's
Mhm.
cool. Yeah.
Within 24 hours, you should hopefully be able to be playing or sitting in queues. One of the two.
Yep. Hitting the enter world button.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone for hanging out, chilling, asking questions, commenting, being around, supporting, and also a big thank you to Quissy for joining us today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun and really, really great to talk to you both.
It was great
Yeah,
having you
Thanks
here as
for
well.
writing all the guides. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for that too.
It was a lot of fun writing them. I will say that.
That's awesome to hear. And yeah, see you guys in the login queues. Yeah, that's a good one.
You always do a high five.
Oh yeah, we
So
do.
which
Yes,
side are we on? This side or the other side?
other side for you.
Okay.
I'm gonna be this side. So Quissy, do you think you can multitask and use two hands for a high five?
Oh yeah, I'll give it a try.
Okay, so one
Okay.
has to be high to reach me, and then one has to be a bit lower to reach Perk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Alright, we got
so if
this.
you go a little bit
Okay.
higher, oh, Luna's like, oh, you have a hand there. Okay, I think that should be good. Or maybe your lower hand should go up a little bit. Perfect. Okay,
Okay, I need to do a
Okay.
countdown and then we're gonna do a high five.
okay.
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 3, 2, 1.
Yes! We did it!
worked.
Perfect measurement. And my cat
Yep.
is here like, okay, I can hear that you're ending the stream. Time to give me attention. All right, we did it. Thank you so much, Quissy, again for being here. And we will see the rest of you guys next time with an update on what is going on with the classic
Yeah.
servers.
Next
probably.
level classic news.
Yes. Bye everyone. Take care
Bye.
and have fun in the world of Warcraft.
See you in Azeroth.
In Azeroth, yes.
Bye-bye.
Either on the
Bye.
same side or on the battlefield. One of the two.
Yep.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.